Hey there.
Hey.
What did you learn this week?
So this week I learned that there are definite issues with the messaging that we send to our daughters as opposed to our sons. When we're talking about Lori Harvey and who she's dating.
Oh, yeah.
The newest guy that she's with, which is Michael B. Jordan.
People have so many opinions about
that. They do.
I
Yummy.
don't know why.
I don't know why either. She's doing what 20-year-olds do.
Right.
And I think that there is definitely, this big discussion on how do you teach your daughters? What are they allowed to do? What messaging are you sending to them? And what kind of messaging are we sending to our sons?
Yeah.
Because I think that there is an importance in discussing the messaging that we send to both.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
And what did you learn?
I learned that the state of Texas was all messed up last week.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And my heart goes out to them. And
God bless them.
Just going to talk around some of that stuff
and the
today.
struggles that they've had. With
Definitely not a situation anyone wants themselves to be in.
No.
And how, it's basically a failure of the infrastructure that they paid into that was not there for them in their time of need.
But the snowing was unprecedented, right?
Oh, yeah. First time in 10 years that it's happened, but it has happened before.
Okay. So, why aren't they prepared?
They should have been prepared. They were given more than enough notice that something could happen in the future. They chose not to. So they were let down by the government and by the private companies.
Yes.
And we'll get into a little bit of that today. All right?
All right.
Oh, so take a listen with us and enjoy the show.
See you soon.
Welcome to the Hallspace Podcast. It's about connections. I'm your host, Dr. Ritch Hall, and this is a weekly conversation about whatever and however I see to connect things. For people who want to connect, chat, and learn a thing or two about a thing or two. Without further ado, let's start the show. Hello.
Hey there.
Welcome to the Hallspace Podcast.
Welcome.
I'm your host, Ritch Hall, and with me, my lovely co-host,
Nicole Hall.
Lovely and capable. Almost forgot that part.
I always wait for that part, lovely and capable.
Yes. It escaped me for a moment, but now I'm back in the swing of things.
Did you forget?
Just for a second. I knew I was supposed to say something, but I did not remember what I was supposed to be saying. Yeah. Welcome back to the Hallspace Podcast for another episode.
Season 2, episode
5.
5.
Yeah, we did an episode. I dropped a bonus episode.
That's right. Of
for the Judas and the Black Messiah review.
Yeah, check that out.
Discussion.
If you have not listened to it yet.
Yes. It dropped over the weekend.
Yep.
And this one will drop probably during the week itself.
Okay.
So
check us out.
Yes, please check it out. And we're talking today about the unfortunate state of Texas.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Praying for Texas. And all that they're going through.
They had record winter storms.
They did.
Got about a foot of snow, 12.
Yeah.
Almost 12 inches of snow in different places.
And a lot of ice.
A lot of ice that came with the snow. First time that had happened, Dallas hadn't seen snow in 10 years.
Right.
Other parts of snow hadn't seen that much snow in decades, so 30 years.
Right. And so if you consider how their houses are made and how their roofs are put together.
How they're just used to living on a day-to-day basis.
How I mean, there are a couple people down there that were like, I don't even own a coat.
Why would they have to?
Because
their weather never falls
never
below
had to do that.
30 degrees.
Exactly.
And suddenly it was at 5 degrees.
Right.
They were suddenly looking at 5-degree weather. Coldest the temperature had ever been since 1989.
It's crazy.
Right.
And a lot of the everything had iced over and their pipes had burst.
On Monday they started seeing rolling blackouts. So the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, ERCOT. So Texas has its own grid, and the grid started going out. It gave 90% of the power to the state, and as of Monday last week, power started going out. There were more than 4 million customers still without power on Tuesday
there
of last week.
There are a number of families without power.
Yes.
They're unable to do anything in their houses On top of that, it's flooded.
Right. Pipes started bursting because of the
Pipes
cold.
are bursting, and it's cold. And
stores
so,
were running out of products.
They one of the people I follow showed pictures of the grocery stores, and everybody did what we did at the beginning of the pandemic, which
and
was
what people do
everything.
whenever there's
a
whenever there's an issue, people always start rushing to the grocery store and they clean out all the bread, all the pasta,
bread, pasta,
all the milk,
toilet paper, milk, all that stuff.
And unfortunately, so Tuesday they were reporting more than 550 vehicle crashes between Sunday and Tuesday in the Houston area alone. So snow was pretty much on the roads. They didn't even have salt. Like they weren't able to salt the roads because they weren't prepared for
this type of storm.
A lot of stuff we take for granted because we just sort of know we had as much snow. So Ohio also had several feet of snow during the same time.
We've had a lot of snow during this time.
The world didn't shut down completely.
It did not. We had snow days, but we still had our trucks.
The kids were pretty much out of school all week.
They've been out of school for like 2 weeks now, which is like,
because of snow, because we've been getting record levels of snow that I don't even remember getting in the last decade.
They can still get online. Help me out here.
No, I mean, that was what frustrated me. Like, normally I would have had a bunch of snow days for work, but because we could work remote, our boss was like, just work remote. So all my clients were still, they made it wasn't I get a day off.
No.
I think the time of me getting days off for snow days is pretty much over. Like,
I agree.
I'll just go remote, which is unfortunate.
My company is the same way, and the school system, they have both remote and they have in person, and they said, the in-person kids can just do what the remote kids are doing because they're like, there's no need to not have school. And
except that most of the teachers go to school.
They go to the school to do remote. And so they're like, okay, we're going to make snow days for for everybody. Exactly. So, you're trying to do your job, I'm trying to do mine, and the kids are like, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah, because they have nothing that they're responsible for, unfortunately.
Our tutor, she couldn't come because she lives on the other side of town.
Yeah, so they were allowed to go feral. So a lot of Roblox was played in my house last week, and it's just what it is.
Yeah,
because we still had to work. I mean, somebody asked like how the kids are doing. They're mostly fine.
They're living their lives,
Like they're largely fine with this whole thing.
This is their normal.
Yeah, it's become their normal. So they're not like terminally unhappy from this. No. They're they're not as excited as they would be if we had like events coming up. We do small things, but there isn't a lot going on. And they're just kind of taking it in stride.
They really are. And I think we have, with family night and things like that, we have enough activities with our COVID circle that they aren't missing complete human interaction, So I think that they are faring pretty well considering the situation, But I mean, imagine doing that and our house is flooded and we're in Texas and it's cold and you're not used to it being cold. I mean, if we move to Florida, I'm gonna be mad if it's cold. Okay,
Florida was the only place that was not cold this week.
It actually
the country had record low temperatures all week last week, and Florida was one of the only places where the sun continued to shine. So it earned its moniker, the Sunshine State, this week.
Yeah,
and
we're here.
I mean, but they also get the hurricanes. So
I don't.
You want the trade off?
I don't care.
Ugh. So yeah. So most Texans went without power for most of the week.
They did.
By Saturday, there were still 69,000 people who still didn't have power.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. And that wasn't just Texas that was struggling with power. Mississippi, Louisiana, Kentucky, and West Virginia also struggled with electricity, I heard. Texas was pretty much the most in the news because it was such a political firestorm around it. But a lot of people were disrupted. They were without running water.
A lot of them still are.
The power plants were not ready for the freezing conditions. So natural gas just went out. Like, people no longer had gas.
People were looking for kerosene.
The pipelines that transported the gas froze.
Yep.
And it got worse and worse as time went on.
Yep.
And most of the means of production, they were blaming it on the Green New Deal. Like, some of the wind turbines froze, but that's because the state failed to keep them up in a way that would allow them to function
keep going in such a situation.
Extreme temperatures, because they just never thought they'd have to.
Right.
So definitely a failure of the government.
Absolutely.
And the businesses
Absolutely.
that should have been, have a little bit more foresight. I can understand you go 30 years without having these conditions.
Yeah, but
there is sort of a minimal
these
level.
Things? Come on.
And this is often when you have those conversations about small government. It's like these regulations exist for a reason, because if something happens, it might be too late. And so, 58 people died.
Wow.
In the regions.
Well, and I know the biggest thing that came across was that there was a little kid with hypothermia that died.
Yeah, 11 years old.
He was 11 years old.
That was what was killing people. Hypothermia. There were house fires, people trying to start fires in their home, and those getting out of control pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so people were dying of a variety of things. Hypothermia, house fires, drownings, car crashes.
Okay,
were
because
happening.
of the ice and stuff.
Most people weren't used to driving on ice.
Right.
Once again, don't have the experience we have in the Midwest on how do you drive on ice and snow.
Right.
And carbon monoxide was killing a lot of people, unfortunately. People were using their cars to warm up. But if you kept your garage door closed,
that becomes a thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's going to fill up with gas. And carbon monoxide is a very insidious gas. It doesn't, you don't notice you're suffocating from it. You just kind of go to sleep.
No, and then that's it for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You start to feel tired because carbon monoxide will replace the oxygen in your lungs. It will slowly but surely be absorbed.
That's how it works.
Mm-hmm. And so your body doesn't even kind of know the difference.
Wow.
And it sort of just slowly but surely chokes your cells. Unfortunately.
And then that's it for you.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why they suggest carbon monoxide monitors.
Because it's odorless, it doesn't have a scent, and your body will just absorb it.
Yep.
And it's one of those things in the air is all sorts of things that aren't oxygen, like nitrogen and things like that. But there's a certain level of absorption that once it happens, it's too late. And so people running generators in their house, trying to start fires in their house, you don't think about the processes that go into these things, because when you're running your car in your house, your car in your garage, there's a gas that's coming out your exhaust. When you have a fire. Fires eat oxygen too and emit gases. Depending on what you're burning,
you
should not be inhaling a lot of it.
Yeah.
And normally, you're able to, the gas is able to escape if you're outside, if you're starting a fire outside. That's why some of the advice that was given was, if you can do small candles and use those, you're not going to, you can generate heat and not create a situation where you're going to be suffocated.
Right.
But when you're starting a barrel fire, or, if you have never used your fireplace and you don't know to have the flue open, you might be letting a gas into your home that will affect you, unfortunately. And not everybody, once again, not everybody was equipped. I know a lot of this stuff because I was a Boy Scout, and I just love information. But when you're thinking about how do you conserve heat, most people don't think, well, you got to huddle in a room. Hopefully, it's a room without a window. You got
heat has to be non-toxic, and
the heat part of itself isn't necessarily toxic. A lot of it, it's not allowing heat to shed. So you want to create a tinted area of some kind that has a lot of blankets and things like that, so that you're able to experience, hold in as much heat as you can, and then have some small way of generating heat. So a tea candle or a small candle is good. If you can start a fire outside and keep it going, and then heat an object, like if you have a brick or some kind of stones, those are often good. You can use a cast iron pot, honestly.
Yeah.
That's what the settlers would do. You heat a pot and then you bring it in and sit it on a surface.
Heat that you
it'll essentially until it dissipates off heat. Similar when if you keep it in a smaller area, it can then just give you just enough heat to get by, right? A small area where you're not letting the heat escape.
Right.
So you don't want to go out. You want to go outside as little as possible. You want to shut off as many rooms as possible.
A lot of people were saying if you had tents.
Yeah, you want to
up.
You can get a pop-up tent in an area that is enclosed, so the heat can't escape. Because that's really your problem, is the heat escaping. And once it goes out, it's harder to generate heat.
Right.
So you want to find ways to keep heat contained, and you can create essentially a pillow fort. A pillow fort could be good if you just wrap up area in blankets. And it's been kind of fascinating in a lot of ways to sort of watch this unfold from a distance. It would not be fascinating to live in it.
Not at all. If this, we had to do it. Yeah.
And then people's pipes, like I said, people's pipes were bursting. So that was essentially creating more damage.
That was the biggest issue.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the houses, it's cold, there's no electricity, but once the pipes freeze and they burst,
now you're creating a hazard.
Now you're creating all kinds of issues.
And, you can't be safe in your own home. So people were watching their homes essentially disintegrate from water.
Roofs are crashing in and stairs and floors are just getting full of water, cold water. Yeah, no.
And even if you turn the water off in your house, like once the pipe bursts, it's
whatever
the water that's in the pipe
go.
Still has to get out.
It'll go
unfortunately, and water ruins. And then water treatment facilities were going down. So people had to boil water, but what are you boiling water with?
Right,
like, you can't just boil water.
Yeah. Like getting some twigs together to
right. And it's not good just boil water. You want to essentially create up some system to collect condensation, because the water that's steaming off is actually cleaner than the water that's going to be in your pot. Like the pot will kill some microbes, but if there's active things in your water, you want to set up some kind of distillation process, which is I know how to do that, but even if I had to do it under duress, I could. But like right now, just thinking, how would I set up a distillation process with no power, no anything? It would be definitely very difficult to try to pull that off.
Right. If you even knew how to pull it off. Right.
And it's one thing to be thinking about how to survive something like this as a thought exercise. It's another thing to be,
actually have to do it. Yeah.
Right. With like as a husband and father, it's like, how do I do this with my kids, with you?
Right.
Say with your mom, with the dog. Like, how do I keep everybody alive?
Pets and with
and what's interesting about that is that this entire quarantine experience has lent itself to a lot of like, how do we survive questions.
Yep.
But now that's like a whole nother level of, how do you survive without the basic amenities that you pay for?
Yeah. One of the videos you were listening to, and it was so sad, you could hear like the water rushing in, and I didn't see the video, but she said, what am I supposed to do?
Right.
And it's I had a fire a number of years ago, and we got out and the firefighters were there and everything,
Yeah.
But one of the first things was, what am I supposed to do?
Right. You immediately feel kind of overwhelmed.
What do I do now?
Abilities at that time.
Yeah. I normally have a hammer and a nail and a screwdriver and but okay, so you have none of that.
Yeah, this is above your basic level of
Yeah.
Yeah, and like the grocery stores were like we said, picked clean.
They were absolutely
sometimes
picked
the
clean.
grocery stores themselves lose power, so they had to throw a lot of food out. I saw like they were calling police in because people were dumpster diving for food. It's like this is these people's only option.
This is how.
And it kind of trips me up that once again the American imagination and capitalism is such a great influence that rather than you could just give that food to people, like you could literally say to them like, "Hey, take this food off our hands.
You got to have. You got today to get it."
But because they can't profit off of it, they'll throw it away, and then
they would rather throw it away, than to just put a bunch of tables out and give it to people who are going to use it.
Yeah, just whoever shows up, just get some food out and go, and take some, not all.
Yeah.
And there were grocery stores. I did see some grocery stores that did that. Like the power went out, and everybody that was in the store, they just said, "Take what you can."
Right.
Because they knew, like, if the power goes out for too long, their food is getting tossed anyway.
They're legally not allowed to sell it. Right.
And they're also somehow legally not allowed to just let you get it out their trash can, like it's private property.
Right.
And so it tells you, how messed up America is and how profit motivated. And I saw a meme that said, America's not prepared for anything, that when it comes to sustaining their people, like these issues around poverty and climate and all of this. It's like we spend so much money on war,
other things,
on incarceration.
Yep.
On this sort of national footprint.
Right.
And yet these other basic human needs, which
we still struggle with.
And when something goes wrong, we almost never look prepared.
We're like bumbling. Yeah. I think the one of the bigger egregious things about this is we had Hurricane Katrina. Texas has had floods before, right? Why is it there?
Why does it take so long?
Why
to get help? We have FEMA. That's what FEMA is supposed to be for.
Absolutely,
for federal emergencies.
They live in a place where it could flood. It's happened before.
Yeah.
Why isn't that something that they are prepared to do? Why isn't that something that?
Why is there not a mechanism that gets activated as soon as something goes wrong?
Immediately,
they can jump on it almost immediately.
Yeah.
And you saw many people. There was a lot of charitable giving, but it's so weird that they have to become reliant.
Why
on
are
charity.
people giving when there are taxpayers?
Right. And that was what was frustrating. There was, and many people might have heard the story of the mayor of Colorado City, who wrote this very scathing letter on his Facebook page, basically saying, nobody owes you anything. And for those people who can't take care of themselves and are waiting for the government to come help them, then, basically like you're losers, which is insane.
Which is ridiculous because we
a public office.
Pay your
we don't,
salary.
but they do. The people of that city. So if you're the mayor of that city who ran on promises to that city.
If you're getting specific, But your salary is paid by your constituents.
Right. And so
you owe them
you're supposed to be a servant of the people. Like it's literally a customer service job.
It is your job.
And it's kind of weird.
No, it's
that how some of those narratives have shifted to where
tomfoolery is what it is.
Nothing is owed to people, and asking for a handout at all is asking for socialism or asking for.
You're the one asking for the handout. If I pay you taxes and you
don't want to do a job for it,
to do the job,
you don't have to take any accountability or job for it. Right. And so much of the, post New Deal America conversation has been shifted to the point where conservative means the government does nothing for you and you are to self-sustain. And I think that's sort of what's playing out in Texas, is that they cannot do that independent of.
Well, and I mean, honestly, not to tangent too much, the bigger egregious thing was the senator.
Oh, Ted Cruz, the senator of the state. Just
flew to Cancun,
flying his family to Cancun
He
wanted to take his family to a safer place. He wanted a better life for his family, so he took them across the border. What's so wrong with that?
Right. Which I think is the biggest ironic thing, right? About the whole situation.
It's definitely a tragedy, a comedy.
People are I mean, that was the first thing people pointed out was, so you took your kids to a better place.
Yeah, and abandon. I mean,
running water.
And he's saying, I didn't know it would look bad, but it's like
it looks bad
in terms of optics. Like, how detached from your base are you?
From your people.
It's like they're drowning, and you're like, hey, but I got a lifeboat though.
I'll be back.
So I'm gonna holler at y'all. Good luck, best of luck, and then to try to say, well, I didn't know what I could do. I mean, what more could be done? And I had to essentially
get down on the ground and figure it out.
And what's so fascinating about this, as an African American young man, or I'll still consider myself younger than 60, that we are used to this happening to us. We come from the inner cities and even the suburbs that have been abandoned by white flight, and the people who govern us, the people who want to be in charge of us, the police, the mayors, they often live outside the city limits, or they extend the city limits so far out that they are detached from the people they represent.
They don't have to live in the situation.
So they have no understanding of the day-to-day struggles of these groups of people. So when you talk about a Ted Cruz, like, I know it sounds like it's bad for you guys out there, but I've really got to get my family taken care of.
I'll be back.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know why the school systems are bad over where you guys live. I just know,
my kids are receiving
the best care and treatment. Good luck to you. And like I said,
and ultimately that's part of the problem, right?
You're absolutely part of the problem. I think it's like fundamentally the problem. If you look at like the last 2 election cycles, this idea that we can get into this us versus them with us as Americans.
How are we hiring these people?
We are all Americans. We are in an ecosystem,
right?
And
they represent us, but they don't have to live the way that we do.
Right. Yeah. Right. I mean, in America's always been a have and have nots. I mean, what country in the world isn't?
But I don't want to pay your salary.
But I think one of the things they've done with some of the issues is boil them down to, well, these Christian fundamentalist issues, these gun rights issues, abortion issues, things that, once again, none of those issues help you when your power goes out and your water is out
and your roof is caved in.
And these values are great existential. We need to answer these questions.
They're great distractors from
the real role of government, which I believe is to keep the roads going, to keep the power flowing, that I pay into these systems to protect me.
If I have nowhere to live, I have somewhere else to go.
Right. And that is the responsibility of government to maintain
absolutely is.
And protect its peoples. And if it's not doing that, it's failing.
What else are you doing?
And we know that the least of us in America, the least of these, it's, in a very non-Christian way. We're a Christian nation, and yet we're willing to let child poverty be a thing. We're willing to let so many people be over incarcerated. And I tell you guys, I don't know if I said this last week or I said it in a diatribe somewhere else in an impromptu TED talk with another person. I looked at the state budget last week at some point, and I saw how much this state spends on incarceration, and it's like,
ridiculous.
The argument that we shouldn't just give the homeless houses, we shouldn't just give drug addicts housing, is inane when you look at the fact that we do already pay to house people. We just do it in jail. And it's probably infinitely cheaper to give them a case manager and an apartment.
And help them through life.
Yeah. Rather than incarcerating them where we're just putting them in a box and hoping the problem goes away.
Well, no, we're boxing that problem up for 10 to 15.
Yeah. The biggest drug treatment facility in America is the prison system. Yep. So we're dealing with the problem. We're just doing it in a very dysfunctional way.
Yeah.
And so it's very frustrating to a person like me. I guess you can call me a bleeding heart liberal. I think Jesus would agree with me, but then again, that's my interpretation of Jesus, that we should do more for people, and that the systems are able to work because as a nation, we're kind of so successful. I mean, but if COVID proved nothing else, if this disaster in Texas proved nothing else, the United States is a card game, man. We've been playing 3-card Monty and hiding our hand for so long that when real stuff happens, we are genuinely not prepared. And if we don't get together and try to figure out how to solve real problems rather than talking bad about either side when both sides are flawed, then we are going to fail as a nation and as a people. Yeah. And it's very hard to look past some of the scathing rhetoric that has been used on both sides. I think there's one side. I'll say the side that's been anti-me for most of my life, that doesn't even know how bad it is at excusing me and ignoring the issues around African Americans and minority populations. There's one side that just has a really bad track record. There's another side you can make an argument for, doesn't have the greatest track record, but at least they listen. And so for me, it's like, well, I mean, if this side's messed up, I'm going to listen to the side who at least brings me up occasionally, as opposed to the other side who acts like I don't know what I'm talking about completely. Right. Now, hey, Biden's dropped the ball on some of his promises already. Like we thought we were getting $50,000 in student loan forgiveness, might not get 10. Yeah. But there's still time to hold him to the fire for that. And I do think that right now he could say, I got this bigger crisis. But I think, in thinking about some of the things we've talked about before, I think if we as a nation start, really holding him accountable, the thing about politicians is they do work for us. And you can, as the public, force their hand.
Demand them to do what they said they were going to do.
Yeah. But the problem is our issues are so diverse and there's so much going on that it's often easy to forget or ignore.
We would have to unify in order for that to really enact.
Yeah, and there are a lot of people who struggle with those things. Like right now, we need doctors. So it should not cost so much money for people to go to med school when we need doctors. Particularly, we are in the middle of a health crisis. Yeah. So why not just make it as nurses. Anybody who wants to become a doctor in the next 5 years, here you go. In you go. Anybody who's been a doctor, you know what you shouldn't be doing? Nobody who kept people alive during a national disaster where hundreds of thousands of us were dying every day. Yeah. Nobody should still be dealing with debt after that. Yeah. We should just hire them, float that. Hey, you know what? You were there when we needed it. We've been literally killing you every day. Yep. Yeah. We should go ahead and pay this off because if they were a car company or if they were a bank or if they were
it'd be a different story. There wouldn't even be
wouldn't even think about it. It'd be like, well, they need these trillions of dollars in tax cuts. Right. But these people who were literally swimming in debt because they went into a job to keep us alive as a nation, because if you don't, we don't live. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So let them off the hook with those debts. And then you could say, well, they shouldn't have gone into that. But also, your kidneys would kill you if they didn't. Right. Or, the water that's currently, killing, but like there's nobody to stop you from dying if they don't go into these fields.
Right.
So so we should just, as a society, say, man, we need more of them. We should incentivize people going into it, not having to worry about. Like, I'm literally talking with a girl who's going to medical school who has to ask herself, do I go to a cheaper medical school because I don't want to take on this much interest on my student loans because she can't afford it. And I guess we as a society is like, hey, you got to make the tough decision here. But I mean, wouldn't you want a person who's capable of getting into the best and the brightest school to get into it and not have to ask herself the question of whether or not I can afford it?
Absolutely.
Don't you want the best doctor to cut your grandmother open, to maybe cut you open one day? Yeah. Like, and then the idea that we're just like, as a society, like, okay with that is weird. It's absurd.
It is crazy. And what's even crazier is that there are people who could fake their way through all of that.
I mean,
I watch a lot of true crime. So
yeah, I was going to say, I mean, there are people who fake their way through a lot of things, and ultimately we can't get caught up. I think the thing is, and I think that's often the case that is made by the conservative, currently Republican Party side. Well, if you opened up the doors too wide, then everybody get in, and charlatans would get in. And it's like, does that really matter though?
No.
If there were more doctors, yes, that means that there would be more bad doctors, but ultimately it means more doctors.
Yeah.
So it should be okay to help more people, even if it means you might help one bad person.
Yeah.
Right? One person who's gaming the system, I'm willing to take that chance.
Because then you have
more doctors and nurses. Like, we literally know we were in a nursing shortage before COVID happened. We burned out a lot of nurses this year, and we haven't done anything yet to replenish the supply of more nurses. We know we're going to need them. And there's some of them who are probably already jumped ship, some of them who've perished as a result of dealing with this deadly disease. And we have to ask ourselves, what are we going to do to make sure that there's more of them? Because we know as a nation, we're just going to need more.
We're always going to need them.
We're always going to need a supply of this.
We're always going to need them.
We have so many people. So many people going into business degrees, so many people going into finance, so many people going, my generation, it was all law school and doctors. But once again, that doesn't turn out to be as lucrative because of the loans, because of the situations you have to go into. We're funneling these people into these more lucrative, I'm making air quotes, degrees and jobs, when in reality, when the snow hits the ground, who do we really need? Yeah. We need EMTs. We need food service workers. We need plumbers. We need all these hand-on tool jobs.
Absolutely.
And we're like,
we need specialists. All these specialists in all of these different.
We need nurses. The hospitals didn't have water, so the hospitals couldn't perform surgeries. There was a guy who died because he couldn't get dialysis because the water was messed up at the hospital. They didn't have clean water that he needed to filter.
Jesus.
And it's like that, once these tragedies start hitting, people start dying. And my biggest fear here is that, like, in the state of Texas, in America, we'll go, oh, wow, that was a really messed up week.
Bummer.
Back to normal.
Right.
Let's everybody get back to normal as fast as possible.
Let's ensure that this never happens again.
Let's ensure that nothing like this can ever happen again, because we don't know how it got this way, but we can't let this keep happening.
Yeah.
But America has always been America is in many ways like a marriage. It's a car you're trying to fix while it's in motion, rolling downhill. Yeah. And it's very hard to stop and go, hey, everybody break up. And for a second, let's figure out what we're doing.
You would think the previous tragedies, the previous
America's had tragedies on top of tragedies. Like, how many times do kids have to get shot at schools before we go, something should be done about this. We can't keep letting this happen. But we're such a dysfunctional family.
We're so dysfunctional. We're like, oh, we'll just have them hide under the desks.
Yeah. Maybe if we just give them door locks, better door locks, and maybe consider giving the teachers guns. What if we give the teachers guns? That won't mean more people won't get shot at all. Like, just raise the probability of guns being in the environment.
Which is just ridiculous.
There's just going to be guns. What could be done? The limited in imagination, once again, in this country is very frustrating to me. Yeah. And I don't want to be one of those guys who rants about politics every week. But, I mean, in thinking about this tragedy in Texas and trying to sort of find some sort of understanding of the what and the why happened there, I have to feel like more could have been done. And now that it's happened, what can be done? Because the insurance companies are going to try to fleece these people. Absolutely. Be like, well, act of God, can't pay you for this.
The gas and electric companies.
They were raising prices.
The roofing companies.
People.
all the places
the gas and electric companies were raising prices on people who were in a tragedy.
Which is ridiculous.
Some people were paying, they were expecting $1,000 pay. Somebody, a $1,000 bill. Somebody in one of my feeds was like, hey, turn off your auto pay for your bills next month because they're going to try to jack you. because
they're going to try to get
whatever
paid no matter
little
what.
power you got, they want to charge you for out the nose.
Right.
And that's insane. Like, that's not how a sane country reacts.
No.
That's how an insane and predatory country reacts.
An empathetic.
No, that's not.
Yeah.
That's not how a nation that calls itself Christian should react.
I agree.
Because that's not WWJD.
Right. Right.
Do we disagree on that?
No, I mean, there are people who will disagree and be like, well, I mean, who's going to pay for it? Blah, blah, blah. But we're also the country who has like Jeff Bezos sitting on billions of dollars, close to $1 trillion. Right.
And we're totally willing to let the rich have as much as they want. But the people down here, and it's the middle class who gets to hurt the most by this. It's the middle class who's had to face this.
Lower class.
Right.
Everybody else.
Middle class and below. So if you know the middle class, they were the ones with the phones and the cameras who were showing how bad this was. What
Imagine
were
the people who didn't
show?
Let them eat cake.
Aren't part of these stories.
Let them eat cake.
Yeah.
Let him eat cake.
And so when your senator gets on a plane and he flies to Cancun because he can, last minute in the middle of a pandemic, fly to another country.
Right.
What does that look like? Does it look at all like he cares about you?
Right. Well, as opposed to rolling up his sleeves and saying,
I'm going to be down there with you.
Yeah.
Amongst you.
Yeah.
It's very, I mean, I'm not going to, I mean, how do you not draw parallels to the fact that, you know, those people stormed the Capitol on January 6th. Mm-hmm. The guy who says, let's go to the Capitol, I'm going to be with you. Mm-hmm. And yet when they're at the Capitol, he's nowhere to be found. Like, that's bad leadership.
Absolutely.
I'm not there with you to solve these problems.
No, that's inciting violence and then disappearing.
No, like it's throwing a rock and high in your hand, but still, it's like
same difference.
Like if you're gonna say that you're part of this and you believe in these people, you got to also be there with them when they're in the struggle, when they're in the pit.
I mean, if they're true leaders.
If you're a true leader, that's
if
what
you're
true
just behaving
is.
Badly.
Mm-hmm.
Then you'll be like, hey, I think y'all should go ahead and storm the Capitol and see how that goes, man.
I mean, and for me, that's always been a thing about leadership. Like, I tend to avoid leadership until I absolutely see no other way out of it because I know it just means so much responsibility.
No, you're responsible for the people that you lead.
Right. And it's like, oh, like everything is on me and I take it so much seriously. Mm-hmm. And the older I get, the more I understand, like, if I wanted this, sure. If my ego just wanted it, yeah, sure. I'll be the senator.
But there's this inherent responsibility.
There's an internal sense of, no, I have to be a servant to these people.
You do.
Like, I need to make them feel like everything that
and you
their
have to guide them
to me,
appropriately.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so I can't just say and do whatever I want. Like, I have to be cognizant of.
Not with impunity, you cannot.
Right.
No.
Right. And I feel like not enough politicians, and once again, I'll say on both sides. Mm-hmm. Cincinnati's dealing with a lot of stuff with some Democratic politicians in our city council that I'm like, hey, you're in charge.
Guys,
like,
really?
It's a lot of corruption I'm hearing about.
Yeah. Is this what we're doing? Is this what we're paying you to do?
And even P.G. Sittenfeld. There we go. Sittenfeld. Okay. Sittenfeld was found for corruption. I'm like, hey, dude, you might want to step aside for a while. And, you know, the FBI showed up for a reason.
Oh.
Yeah. And they've held 3 press conferences in the past few months, and I'm wondering how much other corruption are they going to find.
Oh, wow. I didn't.
Yeah, no. It's a whole thing. I feel like, we haven't talked about it here.
We have not.
Because I went to high school with Tamaya Denard. I followed her entire career.
And I remember her stepping down and, you know, all of the things that happened with her.
Yeah. And she and PG, like, they ran pretty tight until this happened, and he kind of dropped her. And then when he's in the hot seat, there wasn't the same, you know,
loyalty, or
there wasn't much loyalty. Like, I didn't feel like from the outside that there was as much loyalty.
Right.
And, you know, of the crimes that they are said to have committed that the FBI came down on the very hard about, you're like, oh, is that a crime? Like, isn't
no
all of politics pay for play?
Done this? Yeah.
Or were they taught how to do this? Because at this point, you're saying it like there's a culture in the city council.
Right.
So, and this is me saying, hey, when somebody on my side makes a mistake, I will say I'm not fully a Democrat. I'm largely independent, but tend to vote Democrat because they tend to speak the language that I like to hear.
Yeah.
And if somebody on that side messes up, I'm like, yeah, okay, you don't need to do this job. Like, there's nothing saying you have to do this job.
No.
Now, the hard part is, in reality, there are few people who really want to do the job. Everybody wants the ego boost that is being in charge.
Right.
But if I've learned nothing else over my lifetime, there's a lot of people who think they know the simple ways of solving problems. But if you think it's simple, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And that's what most of us who know a lot about a lot know. Yeah. It's like there are no simple solutions because there's a million and one things in your way. No. And there could be simple, but it's like, oh, it's a ripple effect.
Yeah.
Because the country is an ecosystem, the city is an ecosystem, the family is an ecosystem, and any change to any piece of that unit makes a change to everybody. It's a ripple effect. And so you have to kind of be thoughtful of that when you're making decisions. So even me sitting on my laurels here in the warmth of an Ohio winter, with my heat and my power on, as I make judgments about how things are done in Texas, I do recognize that they are facing a dire situation I would never want to find myself in. But I still think that the senator should not fly to Texas. Like, at the very least,
fly to
be
Cancun and
on
be with it.
the job.
Right.
At the very least.
Don't leave the state. Don't leave the state that you are in charge of.
Right. And don't, how could you ever make it look like you're not on the job all the time? If nothing else, the optics of you guys are in crisis, so I'm in crisis.
Right, because these are your people.
Right. That's like, in many ways, it's like this house doesn't have power or water. And I'm like, hey, I'm going to fly out real quick.
I'll be right back.
To Chicago. I'll be right back. I'm going to just leave y'all behind.
Right. And I'm sitting here drowning with these kids and this dog.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I was. What more could have been done? I guess I didn't even think about the optics. My daughter wanted to go to a beach, so I took her to a beach. What do you want?
I'm coming back, and the funny thing about it is, it's like, I'm coming right back. He wasn't planning.
Yeah, there was
no.
He was not coming right back. If he could have gotten away with getting away, he would have.
He would have absolutely.
Yeah. And so with that, we're gonna transition here to a commercial, and then I don't know why I use the big word transition. Sometimes big words come out of my head before the small ones do, which is unfortunate. But what are you gonna do? It's how my brain works. It's crystallized intelligence.
Unfortunately.
So we're going to move on to commercial now, and we'll be back right after this
for the second half. See you soon.
So let me tell you about Anchor Podcast. It's the podcasting service that I use. Anchor.fm is the easiest way to make a podcast, and there are many different reasons why, but foremost is it's free. So you don't need to go out and buy a whole bunch of equipment. If you have a phone or a computer and a microphone, you can record and edit your podcast right on your phone or computer. So that's one major benefit, as well as the fact that they'll distribute your podcast to several different podcasting sites for you. Not only can your podcast be found on Anchor, it can also be found on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Google Podcast as well. So you don't have to worry about going to all those different sites and setting yourself up. They'll do it for you. You can also make some money on your podcast. Say you have a podcast that only 5 people listen to on a regular basis. They don't limit you on how many subscribers you have to have in order to be able to make a little bit of change for your podcast to keep yourself going. So pretty much everything you need to start a podcast can be found at Anchor.fm. So go download the app either in the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, or go to Anchor.fm to get started. And I guarantee you, it'll make things so much easier for you, like it has for me. Welcome back.
Hey there. Welcome back.
Welcome back to the Hallspace Podcast. I'm your host, Ritch Hall, with my lovely and capable assistant,
Nicole Hall.
There you go. And we're back. We're going to leave Texas behind for a little bit and talk about some fluff, some entertainment news.
We're going to pray for Texas, and then we're going to move forward.
Talk about a bunch of random nonsense.
Yeah.
Did you hear about the 2 women who dressed as grannies to get the COVID-19 vaccine?
I heard about that. What?
It would be so crazy if it wasn't hilarious. It's wrong. It's definitely wrong. But
definitely wrong. But what?
What? Tried to pass as senior citizens. They were only in their 30s and 40s.
What did they go through a Walgreens and hope
they
to pass?
Showed up to. They were doing it at a convention center.
Oh, Lord.
And so they were in bonnets, gloves, and glasses. So they had talked it out. Like, we're going to look like old people.
We're going to do this.
Yeah. And they got a trespass warning after their dates didn't match those they'd used to register for the vaccine. So they were asking for
You do
ID,
know they're going to ask you for ID,
and they hadn't
right?
thought through all the way to get a...
anytime you get a vaccine for anything,
they ask for your ID. You got to get a fake. You got to get a fake.
Oh my
You're going to do it.
And they're going to ask for your insurance card.
You can get a fake in a week off
ID.
the internet. I know, because I work with college students and they do dumb stuff like that. You can get you a fake ID in about a week.
So, I mean, the sad thing about that is they probably were like, girl, let's dress up as old ladies, go in there, and then we going to go club hopping.
And part of me is more sad about it.
What are you even doing it for?
Because fear. They're just, like, I hear in it, like, oh, I don't just hear shenanigans. I hear two people who were very afraid of something bad happening to them.
If you stay your butt at home, then it's less risk. So my brain says they're dressing up as these old ladies to get this vaccine so they can go out and do hood stuff with their hood friends. Otherwise, you could stay at home and not be exposed at all.
Yeah.
I mean...
Yeah, it's tragic. More than once again, that empathy meter in me is like, oh,
Very
those
low.
poor idiots. And, you know...
Every week is a new one. So
Yeah, there's always a new one. And, okay, so moving on from that story... Kim Kardashian and Kanye West divorcing.
I saw that.
Tragic for Mr. West.
Officially
posted. They lasted longer than anyone thought they would.
It absolutely lasted
7
way
years.
longer. Listen.
Well, they have like 4 children at this point? 4 children.
They do. Let me say this.
They made a lot of kids.
Let me say this. And I say this every time when we talk about Kanye West. You can probably predict what I'm about to say.
Go ahead and say it. You can't not say it.
I can't not say it. He lost his mother, y'all.
Yeah.
Okay. That changes.
He's also kind of lost his mind a little bit.
Like he lost his mind because he lost his mother.
I don't think he just lost his mind because he lost his mother. I mean, the bipolar was strong in him the whole time.
Yeah, no. It's the bipolar has always been there. Okay, let's be clear about that. But that is affected by the fact that you lost your mother.
Yeah, no, I believe that.
I absolutely believe that, and he lost her tragically. She was, so it's.
I mean, and that family, the Kardashian family, being so in the limelight and feeding off the limelight for sustenance has to be very difficult for anyone to live with.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things they cite as the problems in the family is that he doesn't like the craziness of her family. I mean, their family is,
crazy,
nuttier than a fruitcake. Yeah. I mean, and of the people who would be able to tolerate it, I mean, Kanye West, this larger than life figure, could have navigated it better than most, but it's just a lot.
It is absolutely,
and that's one of those. I've often talked about. I never want my family to become, famous in that way, just because I don't know how you survive that. Like, I don't like when 5 people have an opinion about me, let alone millions.
Oh my gosh! I couldn't imagine
that's just too much and stupid. And how do you navigate those shark infested waters?
Oh my gosh!
I don't know.
It's a lot. There are a couple people I follow for various reasons. They're either comedians or they created hair products, whatever. And you go through the comments and, I'm always like, oh, let me add something positive. And you see all of the other, you're like, wow. Like, I mean, when you talk about people, just miserable people and just haters in general, you're like, wow, why are you even mad? Yeah. I mean, if you were this discontent, you could have kept scrolling. It's social media. You don't even have to look at it if you thought this was the most horrible thing you've ever seen. I mean, and and there are some things that, you see that you've got to speak on it, maybe, but there are some things it's just like, I use this to curl my hair, and people be like, I can't believe. It's like, wow, take a whole step back. Yeah. Because you didn't even have to put this out there like that. That's a lot of energy to spend tearing somebody down. So it's very messed up. It is. I was, I feel bad for Mr. West. I've always had empathy they lasted
for Mr. West, and you never want to watch a marriage dissolve under any circumstance. No. Particularly one with 4 kids who've been used to a certain lifestyle.
Let me say this too. Anytime anybody gets married, and we've seen a lot of marriages dissipate over the years, you never go into it thinking 6 months, 3 months, maybe I'll give it a go. Yeah. That's not ever what I think people go into it believing. And it's always so sad when they just cannot make it work, because when you get to that final decision, you have to consider that there are a number of things that have occurred before that. But before they said, this is it. This is the straw that breaks the camel's back kind of thing. And it's so sad. It is so incredibly sad. They were an interesting pair.
Yes, very.
And somehow they made it work over the number of the years. I really kind of pray for them. Maybe they can really co-parent well. there are a lot of people that are saying that they'll go ahead and divorce, but they'll still be together, kind of thing. Maybe not. For the kids' sake, I hope that they can at least be.
Yeah. I mean, they'll be fine. They're still worth millions. So, I have no doubt. But it's still tragic to watch a marriage dissolve in real time. And the fact that we even know about this is one of those, that's messed up.
Oh, man. It's really
we should not be this deep into your soup. But because of the Kardashian media machine.
Yeah.
And they said
filming the show. And
it's going to be on the show. The divorce will be documented on the show because everything that happens to them, which is part of what makes it so surreal. But it's the last season. Yeah. It's probably what makes it such a surreal experience in America when you look at things like this. It's like, is this really happening to you? Like, you want to put it on TV? Because I'm going to tell everybody right now, everybody within the sound of this podcast, if Nicole and I are starting to have a divorce conversation, like, the podcast is over, and we're definitely not documenting that rise and fall.
We're not having this conversation
on the podcast. Like, that's not for anybody. That's private between us and our therapist.
Yo, listen, okay?
So
y'all gonna have to guess.
Yeah. You're gonna be left with a lot of questions. But so I don't know how they could do any of that.
I mean, I've been pretty transparent. I put my business out on the last few episodes, and every time I'm like, ooh, a little more about my personal stuff.
Right. Bruh, it's not easy to let out. Yeah.
It's not. But listen, like this family, this we not doing that.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Y'all, I mean, figure it out if you want to, but.
So it's crazy. It's crazy. Well, I think we're going to transition to the story so you can introduce the story.
There is a whole nother story. And let me just say this. Lori, the streets belong to Lori Harvey.
The streets belong to Lori Harvey, or she belongs to the streets?
No.
The streets belong to her.
I said what I said.
Okay, I get it.
The streets belong to Lori Harvey. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay? She's doing what it do.
Right.
All right? She is Steve Harvey's daughter. And she has been out on dates with a number of really popular guys. And I think the only thing that makes this news is the fact that she is dating she's a popular girl dating a number of popular guys, right?
Yeah.
In my 20s, or in a number of girls' 20s, we dated a number of guys.
That's kind of what your 20s are for. It's for
what you do,
the sorting process of who's a viable romantic partner for you.
That's what you do in your 20s, right?
That's what you should be allowed. You should be allowed.
Nobody keeping count of it. There's nobody taking pictures of it.
Yeah.
There's nobody posting about it.
There's nobody keeping a record outside of you. You know who you mess around with.
Yeah.
But there's a reason that, I'm glad I was born before the internet age, because, I wouldn't want everybody knowing everything about who all I dated.
Because it's none of your business.
It's not any of your business.
It's none of your business. And so they're she's been dating, she dated Diddy, she dated Diddy's son, she dated Future, whatever. But right now, the big news is that she's dating Michael B. Jordan, which we all love. Okay. He is a nice, handsome little young guy. Mm-hmm.
We all love, we love us some Michael B. Jordan. We as a unit, we both do.
I mean, I love him. He's handsome. And he's a good kid.
Is he? Do we really know him as a person?
I mean, we don't, but
he's been without scandal for much of his career. This is among the most scandalous. Now, there were people who were definitely in the Michael B. Jordan only dates white girls camp, and that happened for the last 5 years
that
or something.
That happened all up until now, and he's dating Lori Harvey, and they're like, oh, okay, all right.
Now they're mad at him for
they're dating for
taking this
they're mad at her for bagging Michael B. Jordan.
Let's just stop there for a second, because I've never understood. I do understand it when women get mad that a guy is dating, black man is dating. No, when a black man's dating a white woman, there's a lot of animus about that, because black women feel rejected, whether or not they were ever checking for this person.
Right.
They feel rejected anyway.
There is definitely something to be said for this feeling of rejection that occurs when, black man gets a level of status, success. Mm-hmm. He gets money. He's an actor. He's a ball player. He's something or whatever. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And who he chooses to bring with him is a white girl. It's honestly, I'm older. So the idea that love is like, okay, I mean, whoever you find
is okay.
I don't want them, so I don't care. Yeah. Right. But I do remember feeling like, why is it that these guys, these high earning Kevin Samuels, top earner guys, why is the first thing that they choose is a white girl?
Notice the language you just used. The first thing they choose?
The first thing they choose.
Is it the first thing they choose? Who says first?
I'm saying first.
Why are you saying? Where do you get that word from? Like, who's the? I mean,
are you saying that there's a bunch of black chicks that didn't make the cut?
Absolutely. Like, why are you assuming?
Are you kidding me?
You're assuming there was no selection process by your own language.
There was a selection process
whatsoever. The first white girl, first Becky that jumped in their mentions.
Then they said, "Boom, that's her."
That's her.
Yes,
that's me and her.
Yes,
that's how you believe that happens.
Okay, in
real life.
So let me make this argument with you.
You really believe this?
I absolutely believe this.
You genuinely believe this? That they don't go through any selection process whatsoever?
You don't.
First blonde hair, blue-eyed white girl.
Blue-eyed, blonde. Listen.
That's it? That's how that works?
Let me give you an example.
You're going to give an example. You believe this is going to land this one. Okay, go ahead. Let me
give you an example. My mommy and I were watching Malcolm X. Right? I read
The Autobiography of Malcolm X by Alex Haley.
I read it.
Great book. I recommend it for everyone. My kids are going to be made to read it, whether their school tells them to or not.
They're going to have to read the Autobiography of Malcolm X by Alex Haley. The Judas Factor is also a book that I read that was about the murder of Malcolm X and things like that.
Yeah.
But for those who don't know the story, Malcolm X, before he became Muslim, before he went to jail and things like that, he was Detroit Red. Right. And he was going to these parties. Right. And there was a beautiful chocolate black girl played by Teresa Randall. Right. Just to give you an idea. We're talking about the movie.
It's a dramatization of his real life.
It is a dramatization, but there was a girl that he dated at that time who was raised by her grandmother. Who wasn't putting out, right?
Yeah.
Who needed to be home at a certain time, who needed to be respected, right? He goes to this party. He takes this girl out because he really likes her. She's a great girl, right? And then the white girl shows up. Okay. Okay. And she says at the party, "Why don't you go and take that little girl home, and I'll be here when you're done."
This is in the film.
This is in the film, but please know that I read.
This happens in real life.
I read a number of
every black man who ever marries a white woman.
Not every black man. Please know
the first white girl that comes along. And honestly, I'm gonna throw some more salt into your thing here. Malcolm X ain't married that white girl. He just committed a bunch of crimes with her.
No, he committed a bunch of crimes, and then they both went to jail.
But we're saying that your average basketball player or CEO who marries a white woman, it's the first white girl that shows up that puts out, and that's the one he marries. That there are other factors, or at the very least, a selection process.
Do you believe that there's a selection process? I'm not saying there's not an inherent
white supremacy in how some of these choices are made, and that beauty standards and a variety of other factors don't contribute, but I'm going to disagree with.
Who's the first girl you dated?
I also lived in West by God, Virginia.
I mean, but answer the question.
I dated a white woman. I've dated many white women in my time.
Right. And the first girl you dated, what did she look like?
It was Kate. She was a brown-haired white girl. And, But that was more, honestly, that was definitely well, here's the thing. My grandmother told me I definitely wasn't allowed to marry her. my father's mother said it wasn't Granny. It was my mama. My dad's mom said, "Don't be bringing no white women."
Listen, Mama didn't want you to marry nobody.
No, she did. It's funny.
I don't think she even liked me, and we ended up getting married anyways. So.
Well, by then she was much older and not fully there. But
that's true. That's true.
Yeah, it wasn't one of those things I ever discussed with her. Really,
no. Mama is
she
your
was a mean old
mom.
black lady. Yeah, she was a mean old black lady.
She was a mean old black Southern lady.
When your dad
married,
my mom,
yeah, true.
She didn't like my mom.
That's true. That's true.
neither here nor there. I'm just saying there's a selection process.
So
when I was in school, there was me, there was one other black girl in within 2 grades of me. And yeah.
I wish y'all could see my face right now.
I mean, but I don't think that speaks to a much larger issue. Once again, I didn't marry Kate. I just messed around with her for a year.
You did.
And then she disappeared off the grid in my life. So
she absolutely did.
So that's just a thing that happened.
No, I mean, and ultimately you married the darkest chocolate, this thing that you
People have thought in my past that I was married to a white woman. People think that I'm married to a white woman. In my job and in my profession, people have made some assumptions that I'm married to a white woman. Which I think is hilarious.
Hilarious, because you are 43 years old and you went through undergrad, you went through grad school, you went through your PhD program and all of that. And there were always these parties that we would have to attend as a couple, you know, to sort of, you know, say hi and all that kind of stuff. Schmooze. Exactly. A lot of that. Exactly. And so I think the funny thing was, you know, once you got into the working world, you had graduated, you've gotten your credentials and things like that. There, for people who had not met me.
Yes. Once we stepped out of that world.
Once we stepped out of that world, there were people who knew me, you know, undergrad everywhere, you know.
Because you were in the UC streets.
Yeah. I mean,
once I stepped into another world.
Once you stepped into a whole other world.
People just assumed I was the type of black guy who could be married to a white woman.
You would be married to a white girl. Then they see me and I'm blackity black and I'm black, y'all. And I'm black, y'all. I mean, like, I'm chocolatey black.
Yeah.
Like, it's so people are like.
Throws people off.
Oh, hi.
Yeah.
Hi. Hello. I mean, and I mean, by the time that we had gotten this far up, you know, I'm natural, so it wasn't even. I mean,
you didn't fit certain. You didn't check certain boxes.
I didn't check certain boxes. Yeah, I had been relaxed way before that, and so I mean, I've worked in corporate America my entire time, and so there were a number of things that I knew that I needed to do. There were ways that I needed to speak. There are things that I needed to wear.
She could do the dance.
I could absolutely do the dance, no trouble. And then I got older, you know, and then we got more comfortable with just kind of being who we are, because it's like we made it this far because we're good at what we do.
A lot of times have changed too.
A lot of times have changed, have enabled us to sort of be kind of who we are. And so I thought it was always hilarious that people were like, oh, your wife is. I mean, they like me. I mean, come on, because my personality is.
Yeah. People like you. It's a whole thing.
Yeah. No, it's completely a whole thing. And so we never, I never received any sort of weird backlash because of it.
No.
But there was definitely a sort of like,
yeah.
Oh, hi.
It's interesting.
This is your wife.
Yeah. So, I mean, I say that to say, you know, people have a lot of assumptions about who you're with, and then they project a lot into what that means about you as a person, about what it means for the culture and society. But I mean, and you know, I'm not of the mind that black people need to stay with black people, white people need to stay with white people.
No, you find who you love. It creates
a lot of cultural issues.
I don't care about any of that.
You do.
I don't care about any of that. I think the big thing. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I love how I don't care about any of that, but you also believe that famous black people or rich, successful black people just automatically choose the first Becky they find.
There are mass Beckys.
There's a lot of Beckys. Well, I mean, women outnumber men.
But there are
in
also
all groups.
a lot of Nickys.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. There actually aren't a lot of you. I mean, there are.
I'm sure there are,
but there are not a lot.
I mean, you know.
There's a variety of variables that make you special.
It depends on the circle.
We're going to circle back around to Lori Harvey. That you can get some of that off your chest, because we're running out of time.
we're gonna go back to that. It wasn't so much about choosing who you're with. Once you become successful, I believe that could be a whole episode by itself.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest thing was people are counting the people that she's been with,
which is crazy. Because that's her business.
Number one, that's her business.
Nobody cares.
And number two, she's in her 20s and she's dating.
Yeah. And my take with that was, you can't be mad at her when you have genuinely no words for Lonnie, Common, Rashid Lynn.
Right.
Because he's dated a lot of famous.
He's dated a lot
women.
of girls. I mean, and I don't like to hear
some
it.
people are kind of annoyed that he's dating Tiffany Haddish for a variety of reasons that also involve you being in his business. But I mean, he's ran through Serena Williams, Angela Rye, Erykah Badu. Like he's messed with a lot of Hollywood hip hop people.
He has.
And
honestly,
just what it is.
Honestly, a lot of us ladies, the only thing we care about is like, hey, so he likes a Serena Williams type, huh? Boom. I got you, baby.
So because it's more validating to
Boom. Yes.
you feel like you'll accept it. Like that means it could be me.
Well, no, you know what? I think that happens no matter what. Right. I think that there are people that see you and they're like, well, he's dating this chocolate girl. He must like chocolate girls. When in actuality, you like a variety of.
I don't really have a type. I mean, I do.
You do. No, you do.
But
you do. I mean, you're definitely a, Kelly Rowland kind of, kind of guy. If you got the, hey.
What?
Take some of that bass out of your voice. So, okay.
Anyway.
No, I mean, and I have my types too, but I think that, anytime somebody, I mean, and it's just us. We're like in Cincinnati, like there's 20 people that know us. But if you think about like a Common or you think about like a Michael B. Jordan, you think about any of those kind of guys, it's like, oh, he likes that kind of girl. That means I have a chance. And you're not considering all of the other things that they're bringing to the table besides the visual, right?
Yeah.
And proximity, and there's just sort of a number of things that happen. And I think the biggest thing about Lori Harvey is that y'all stop counting her body count. Okay.
Yeah.
You don't even know. Let that lady do what she gonna do in her 20s. I mean, you don't even know if they're all bodies or not. Right.
Yeah.
Let's be clear about that too.
She's been photographed out with a lot of people. But she also has access to that population.
She absolutely
does. Because it's that population, you're going to know how many times she's gone out with anyone.
Because you're all in her business. Yes.
Because people are all in her business. Absolutely. But there's a lot of people in these streets who's got a decent body count. That
and
if
you're
we were
not
to count them all up, it's not like
it's
30, 40 people.
No, but it's still, I mean,
So the only reason it's a lot is because we happen to know most of their names individually.
Right. I
mean, the Puff Daddy thing
Nobody
is bizarre,
knows.
but who cares?
Who knows how many women Puff Daddy has had?
Puff Daddy's had, about that. I mean, Puff Daddy,
Let's talk about that, though.
Way too many.
Why isn't that in consideration?
Right.
I mean,
right.
Honestly, I have a daughter and I have two sons. We have two sons and honestly, like, we don't want them to rack up those numbers either, but there is definitely a different message that we send to our sons than we send to our daughters.
Yeah.
And it's very evident because Lil Boosie, I just I can't.
I love how you
don't
bring
even.
up Lil Boosie as if he's newsworthy.
I don't
Lil Boosie's
even.
only newsworthy because he keeps creating news around himself.
He keeps creating news. And if I could have like 30 seconds to make a bunch of bad words about him, I would. Cause we first of all, we don't care what he has to say. But
some people care.
Some people care because apparently it keeps coming up. And what he was saying was, if you want your daughter to be like Lori Harvey, then you want her to have sex with 7 or 8 dudes. And that is absolutely not what everybody is saying.
Not at all.
And nobody asked how many girls are, how many girls you have on your notch belt. Okay. Also, we're not talking about the fact that he paid a prostitute to have sex with his underage son.
So you're at this point bringing up issues of his character that make him not a person that should be. He's not an authority that should be listened to.
He doesn't have character. Okay. Let's start with that. Let's start with that. Okay. He doesn't have character.
Okay.
Don't care. Okay. All right. Let's be very clear about that. And people who don't have character need to shut up.
The thing about people who don't have character is they just won't stop talking.
Well, I mean, and that's true. But let's say that he did have character. Are you telling the same story to your sons that you're telling to your daughters?
I do think, I think equality is a weird thing when it comes to boys and girls.
It is.
Because you're not equal for a variety of reasons.
You're not equal. And
so to say that we have to give the same messages to both. Now, I'm not saying I'm telling either of them to whore around. No. But I would say I'm going to give my daughter messages about maintaining, I almost used the word purity, knowing how loaded that word is. Mm-hmm. But I'm telling all of them to protect their heart. No. You can't just do these behaviors without there being consequences to your heart and to your body and to your mind.
Absolutely.
And to yourself emotionally. But, I'm not that dad who's like, hey, get out there and get as many as you can, son.
Right.
Because,
No, because then I would fight you and then it would be a thing.
Yeah, but no, I just don't believe in that.
And
even though I was
you don't believe in
messaging,
that. Yeah.
And, I also know the downfall that comes with that. That, hey,
I mean, and ultimately, the message that you're discussing is very important. If you are talking about discussing the messaging that you're going to give to your children, both female and male, it's that when you give yourself to a person, you are giving a part of yourself, and that's an important consideration to have, right? Mm-hmm. Whether you're male, whether you're female, that is something that you need to really sort of hone in on and say, hey, this is something that you really need to think a lot about before you engage, right? I mean, that's not to say don't date. That's not to say don't go out. That's not to say don't go out and party and things like that.
Yeah. Live your life.
Live your life. But there is something to be considered when you are engaging with that person on a whole nother level, right? Mm-hmm. And that you really need to think about whether that person is worthy, right?
Yeah.
Of that. And so, I think that
you
is
need to make sure the person is worthy of your time and attention.
You absolutely do. And I think that goes for both male and female.
Yes.
I think that, the problem that I have with Lil Bootsy is that, he's got this idea that his boys should be out there just doing what they do. But then he wants to speak on Lori Harvey and he's talking about 7 or 8 dudes. And it's like, seriously? Seriously? Why are you counting her number of dudes? How many chicks have you had? Right. Okay. Then sit down and be quiet. Yeah. Sit down and be quiet. You're speaking on somebody else's daughter. Just stop. There's definitely a double standard that's in play.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know that double standard is unfair necessarily.
Well, okay. Let me also say this as a person that was raised by old school Southern woman. She always made it very, very clear that as a female, as a woman, that men are going to do what they're going to do, but ultimately you're the one that's going to get pregnant, and they can still walk away.
Yeah.
Right. You can't. Right. And you have to be sure that they won't walk away if you are having their baby, if you get pregnant, and all those kind of things. There are so many considerations that need to occur. And I think that the fact that the woman has the burden of carrying the child is always sort of the big consideration that you have to make as a woman, as a female. You have to be able to say, okay, well, I know he wants this, but what do I want? Am I prepared to deal with the consequences of said situation? Right.
Yeah. So
that's always something that I've always been cognizant of. And that's something that my grandmother has always impressed upon me.
Yeah.
She was never kind of like, the boys can do what they want and the girls do, girls need to be pious. But it was always sort of like, hey, this is, very real in these streets. You can mess around and get pregnant. Is that what you want to do?
Yeah, the consequences will be different for you than it will be for guys.
The consequences will
be
different.
I was always raised on the, if you make a baby, you're raising that baby
right
thing. So,
but every guy isn't like that.
Nope,
right?
No.
So if we had gotten, we met when we were 20 and we didn't get married until we were 30.
Yeah.
But we didn't have babies until we were 31.
Yeah.
The idea that
In part because of that messaging that you need to be real
Absolutely
sure.
for that messaging.
You got to do it right.
You got to do it. You have to raise whatever baby you make, and I have to be responsible for whatever baby I'm.
And I say, we've had conversations where I say, I'm not sure we should have waited so long because, man, we are old people now, and
we
these
are
babies
old.
that 6-year-old requires a lot more energy than my 40-year-old body is willing to give out. I'm like,
she requires so much.
Could you chill out, please? Like, I'm at the quiet point in my life. Like,
take it down 1,000.
Like, it should be more like the 10-year-old who just wants to do his own thing over there.
We want to retire soon. Like, what are you doing flopping off the bed?
Right.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So, I do believe, like I said, I think there has to be a double standard. And I don't think it's a double standard. There's just a certain unfairness.
No.
Girls
I think double standard is different than specified messaging.
Yes.
Right?
I will agree with you there. Okay. And that we have to sort of be aware of the differences in outcomes and consequences. Yeah. And by virtue of that, just sort of encourage them to make choices. I mean, like I said, my messaging to them about sex and things like that will be, with every person you're with takes a piece of your heart. Like that's just impossible to avoid just because the way the process is set up. Yeah. And people are like drugs. So every person that you're with, you're going to get a little addicted to them. Yeah. And are they someone who can sustain that, who can feed back into you?
Is that somebody
or are they a person that's going to take or overwhelm
give
you?
A part of yourself to?
And if no, then don't. Yeah. Because just by virtue of any number of factors that could go right or wrong, you could end up with long-term consequences by virtue. That's one of the things about consequence-free sex, this idea that you could just have sex freely without any kind of consequence.
There's no such thing.
There's genuinely no such thing. You get wrapped up in a person. So you have to be cognizant of that. And, you could just do the thing because it feels good, but there's going to be, on a long enough timeline, something happens.
Something will happen. Yeah.
Somebody's going to catch feelings. Any number of things can happen.
Oh, yeah.
Or at the very least, you stack too many bodies, and now you're kind of emotionally stunted in a lot of ways because you don't know how to be with just one person.
So when that person comes up, your person,
you're a little warped in a way that may make it difficult for you to really connect with them. Yeah. Unfortunately. So I think that's sort of the message I'll give all my children. Yeah. With a certain caveat to my daughter that, hey, you need to be extra careful because, just being in the room with a person you think you can trust often can result in you being taken advantage of. Right. In a way that they could be victimized way more than boys can. So I think you do have to specialize the messaging. And I think when it comes to Lori Harvey, it's a matter of because we have these because there are double standards, not just this specialized messaging, but there are definite double standards, particularly when you're in the public spotlight. Like I said, we're not treating Lonnie Rashid Lynn like that. We're treating her like this because she's this young African-American woman, and we always have to have an opinion about them.
She's not doing anything differently than he is.
She's definitely not. Yeah. Except that,
except that she bagged Michael B. Jordan.
Except that right now she's got a guy that everybody kind of seems to want. He's so let them live their life. They seem to be enjoying themselves. They had a really good Valentine's Day according to their social media.
They really
But who cares?
And he's a good guy.
In reality, in your day-to-day, what does it matter?
It doesn't.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't. It's entertainment.
It doesn't matter. It's only entertainment because, honestly, the world kind of got quiet. After the election and after the Capitol thing. And now it's like, what do we worry about? Oh, let's worry about this girl's relationship. It doesn't matter. Hey, we're over time.
Hey.
So we should probably wrap this up.
We should definitely wrap this up. You know what the music means.
You know what the music means. Our time is up.
I say good day, sir.
I say good day. The Hallspace Podcast is brought to you by Hall Productions, LLC. Show notes and credits can be found at our webpage, thehallspacepodcast.wordpress.com. Any questions, comments, or concerns can be sent to us at thehallspacepodcast@gmail.com. The show is written by Daggerpin Davis. Music is curated by DJ Cabal. The show is produced by Chuck Jones and recorded at Slash and Trash Studios. If you like what you hear and you want to hear more, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And I hope you all have a good week. The things I never knew, the things I wanted from you, all the things that I thought but can't say. The things I never knew.
House Hall.